How do we build companies, enterprises, authorities, education houses, whatever it is you lead, that have a culture that is attractive to innovators? Cultures of confidence are led by articulate leaders. There are 3 laws of leadership. Here they are. If you forget everything else, remember these. Communicate. 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 So many enterprises, I've been in media houses that are failing today because people are not getting enough information quickly enough. In the healthcare industry, this is true. People I've met in healthcare who do such awesome work. We couldn't do without them in society, and yet they don't get the right information quickly enough. It doesn't get to them fast enough to respond appropriately. They have no role in decision making. JFK, masterly, in his first address to the House of Congress, said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." But he went further than that. He gave Americans a structure through which they could carry that out. He gave them the Peace Corps, which enabled young people, you may remember, those of you that are prehistoric like me, to travel from America throughout the world and carry in good works what they saw as American values. Give people a role in bringing the change you want them to bring. Make it clear what their role might be. Give them an opportunity to do it. Can I just say that optimism is not what we think it is? We're talking about cultures of confidence. We assume that optimism means glass half full, sunny disposition. How you doing? Oh, great. How's work? Oh, fantastic. Have you sorted that problem? Yeah, yesterday, no problem. And whilst that's kind of attractive, it's not actually what optimism is. The word optimism came to us from the French language in the 17th century, and it meant something quite different. It meant realism with a dash of idealism. So, ladies and gentlemen, optimism isn't glass half full, it's glass half empty, but could be full. And there's a big difference there in the way we lead people. Cultures of confidence are service-oriented, especially where the team is concerned. How many have millennials working in your team? How many sometimes, if you're not a millennial, you find that a challenge? You think about it, millennials, by the time they're 32, if they've gone to university, they expect to have 4 jobs by the time they're 32 in this country. You think about the fact that millennials, of course, are paying high tuition fees these days, and they face much higher costs of housing. Every generation faces its challenges, but these are the challenges of millennials, among others. For a millennial, their most important skill is not their mortgage, because they don't have one. It's not their stocks and shares, because they don't have them. It's not even necessarily their bank account. The most important asset for a millennial is the skill set. How can being involved in your enterprise actually add to my skill set? How can being exposed to your network of alliances help me build my skill set? How can you pass on to me skills that I can use for my future? Now, I'm not saying that that prevents the problem of millennials skipping jobs. I'm saying you're much more likely to provoke loyalty by doing that. An employer survey across the US, Europe and Asia just 5 years ago found that when CEOs were asked, if you had to recruit someone today, who would you go for? Someone who has a certain skill set or a certain mindset. 96% said, I'd go for the mindset. And I think we'd all agree, because you can add the skill set later. But when asked what kind of mindset would you look for, they said we'd go for somebody who engages new experiences gladly and is open to new ideas. We encourage that, ladies and gentlemen, when we reward not just productivity, but DNA. In so many enterprises today, confidence is sapped because we reward performance, but we don't reward or celebrate people who have the right code of values. The code of values we were talking about earlier, they don't naturally carry that. So they do the job, but there's no heart in it. There's no motivation beyond getting the job done. The people you celebrate are the people others will want to emulate. So if you celebrate in things like reward incentive programs, people who not only get the job done but do it with the right values, you will see cultures of confidence beginning to emerge. Community-minded leaders. In America now, there's a push away from return on investment as the sole measure of business performance toward return on community. So no longer is the bottom line simply in dollar terms, it's now also about community well-being. CSR, as we once knew it, is dead. It's not dying, it's dead. People do not want to be involved any longer in companies where community service is tacked on to the edge of the enterprise like a veranda on a house. They want to be involved in companies where CSR is somehow engaged in the living room, right where the decisions are made that shape the future. If we begin to see that, first of all, we attract more young people, which in many cases equals more innovation. And we also build cultures of confidence on a general level. I'll just cover a couple more things quickly. Cultures of confidence are built when we pursue fractal solutions. If you studied biology, you know about fractality or fractal forms. Essentially, these are forms in nature that if you put them under a microscope and turn up the levels of magnification, you will see at each level the same cellular pattern emerging. And at each level, the pattern is meeting a different need within the organism. Sometimes when you and I, as leaders and managers, solve a problem, we push it aside and forget all about it. We don't learn from the solution. We don't ask ourselves, what was the nub of that solution? What were the assumptions I was making to make that solution? What was the research I did to arrive at that solution? Can that be applied in other areas of this business or this healthcare activity or this education house? How can I recycle the solution? Doing that, by the way, requires that we have a holistic view of the enterprise. So people from marketing need to actually spend time in procurement if you're in business, or people in procurement need to spend meaningful time with human resources. Otherwise, there's no cross-pollination of solution. And it has a physical aspect. As a former architect, this is important to me, that the physical space should follow the path of ideas you're trying to encourage. MIT, anybody heard of it? MIT is probably the most inventive, innovative school of education in the United States still today. And it puzzled analysts for many years why so many inventions were coming out of MIT that were built in one room, one building, just a big shed. They called it Building 20. It didn't have a name because it was built in World War II as a temporary edifice. Why was it so successful in provoking innovation? Because when you're in a temporary building, you don't have to make 3 applications to a committee to knock a wall out inside, or put a new window inside, or take a door out inside. The flow of ideas can be expressed in the flow of the architecture. As one group begins to work with another more closely, the architecture changes to make that a more fluid connection. Now, I'm not suggesting we can all go home today and knock holes in walls, but I am suggesting we at least give some thought to how we situate people in the workspace. Millennials always work better, by the way, if they're placed in one area, because millennials thrive on collaboration and feedback. They're not as easily distracted as you might think. They do actually get the job done, but they get it done a little differently than some of us might. So what's the takeaway today? We are moving quickly toward an innovation age. It is unprecedented in its opportunities and challenges. Aberdeen, with its proud history but an even better future, has an opportunity here to craft proactive cultures at both the micro level of individual enterprises and the macro level with support from city governance. If we are willing as leaders to create the kind of cultures we've talked about that are visible leadership, with poised leadership, service-oriented to the team, and then of course the customer, civic-focused, pursuing fractal solutions. Thank you for listening this morning. I'm looking forward to the panels. It's been a delight to speak to you again.